Excellent. Thank you all for joining. I want to kick off our third speaker series tonight. This one is the first part of Advocacy in Action. Dr. Don Hernandez has put a great panel together. I'm going to let Don self-introduce because I'm not going to even try, although I know Don quite well. This will be recorded on our website, and I appreciate everyone's input tonight. And we'll have a second part of Advocacy in a couple months. Don?
Yeah, so I'm Donaldo Hernandez. I am a past president of the California Medical Association. I'm past trustee of this region. I'm a past president of the Santa Cruz Medical Association, and I am currently the vice chair of the California Delegation of the American Medical Association, the vice chair of Physicians for a Healthy California, and I'm a commissioner with the Central California Alliance for Health. And I'm working with Grant and all of us with our medical school project here locally. Yeah, I volunteer for a lot of things that feed my soul, but not necessarily my pocketbook. Anyway, so why is advocacy important and why this conversation now? And in my opinion, I think the stakes have never been higher, given sort of the national and state lens with which we're certainly operating. What does that mean? Costs with respect to running medical practices have increased 59% over the past 2 decades. And at the same time, Medicare payments have fallen 33% as you adjust for inflation. There has been no update with the MEI relative to that. We get a temporary bump here, but then we get a pullback there. And we're back and forth with this whole mishigash, which is the Medicare fee schedule. We have not had an MEI update, which is the Medical Economic Index, which pegs the physician fee schedule to inflation. And we're still trying to get that across the line. So there's a lot of tension in terms of what's really happening. MIPS hurts a lot of practices. The RUC process is broken and really problematic. We can go back to what happened last July and the entire conversation surrounding HR1 and the effect that it had on Medicaid and particularly Medi-Cal in California. We're looking at basically a $1 trillion cut over 10 years, with as many as 10 million people losing their benefits, in addition to what's happening with our individuals within our community that have unfavorable documentation status and their ability to receive compensated care. And on top of that, last Wednesday, the federal government decided to take $1.3 billion away from California for its Medicaid because of, quote, we're not doing enough for fraud. Unprecedented. It's never happened in the history of CMS, with no ability to respond, no specific issues that we're really dealing with respect to why they're doing that. It's very problematic. And again, the need for us to lean in on that becomes really, really important. Scope of practice battles are escalating throughout the country. Right now in Washington, we're fighting a scope battle that would allow pharmacists to prescribe and act essentially as physicians in a lot of environments without any physician oversight. Non-holistic care. And again, as far as I'm concerned, and I think everyone on this call could agree, that what we're really looking for is team-based care, but physician-led team-based care. The people with the most training that have been there the most time and honestly have a great deal more responsibility than most other elements of the team really are at the forefront of making sure that patient safety is maintained and we still continue to practice at the top of our licenses as long with everybody else. Prioritization continues to be a problem, and really the entirety of the challenges with just the administrative burden that many practices feel. We keep winning, we keep getting that pushback, but again, it's incremental and it's required a lot of effort and a lot of time. And with us as physicians really letting being the friendly subject matter experts, I say that again, and I've said that frequently, letting people know who are elected, they understand the rationale and the reasons for why this is really very expensive and a challenging problem for physician practices. Again, all the quality efforts, and I go back to MIPS and really how that's been played out in reality. I think every physician wants to practice high quality medicine, but the way the MIPS program has been rolled out and the way it's been implemented remains problematic. On a state level, we're still challenging with issues with the state budget and prioritization of healthcare delivery in the Medicaid sphere, in the Medi-Cal sphere. And why this really becomes important isn't because anything other than we need physician voices having these conversations. And it's not because we're lobbyists or we come from a think tank or we have an angle. It's because we have a patient in front of us. It's because we live this every single day. You live those realities every single day, from large practices to small practices. Every one of us is impacted by these political decisions in terms of how we can practice medicine and how we see the people we see. And I'm reminded of just today on a young lady that we're taking care of at Dominican. I won't give you any pertinent medical information, but she's a young lady that's had longstanding type 1 diabetes. She's had 2 episodes of diabetic ketoacidosis in the last 10 days at both hospitals at Watsonville and here. She came back in again because she couldn't get in to see her doctor, someone who she's seen as within a system over the hill as a pediatrics patient most of her life. She has an insulin pump that doesn't work, and she can't get the supplies for it because she's between insurances. We're trying to get her emergent Medi-Cal, and at the same time, she's struggling because her blood sugars continue to porpoise up and down, up and down, up and down. She's at higher risk for having ongoing complications of her diabetes. She wants to manage it, but she also has to work. She has to have a fine place to live. She also has to take on the responsibility for all of this while trying to maintain her life in a very, very marginal economic situation. I look at her and I realize her failure and her inability to stay out of hospital isn't on her, it's on the system. The system is fundamentally broken for people just like her. And that's why we need to fight for them, because we can have a voice when they can't. They're busy living their lives, they're busy doing the things that they do. And she should be an exception, not the rule. And unfortunately, more and more, as these economic pressures and these political choices continue to happen, she's no longer the exception. We're seeing more and more people just like her. People in the agricultural section that work for us, that feed us, continue to have problems accessing healthcare, particularly if they have an unfavorable documentation status. They still work, they're still here, they're still providing for their families and doing the best they can. But nevertheless, they're struggling right now in the current environment. Again, I feel like doctors aren't here to call it right or wrong or good or bad, even though I may feel that emotionally. My job is really talking about balls and strikes. You make this choice, these are the implications, and this is what happens. You make a different choice, these are the implications, and that what happens. And so in my mind, this really boils down to us advocating for medicine, advocating for our practices and one another, but really advocating for our patients and our communities. And so that's why this was pulled together this evening. That's why we're having this conversation. And I've asked George Soares from CMA on the state side to ask and talk and give us some updates on what's going on at state level. Amy Bloomfeld is going to join us a little later on the national side. She's at a meeting right now for the AMA and will join a little later. And I've asked my good friend, Catherine Gutfreund, who is the chair of the Council of Legislation, to actually weigh in and talk about this. And then I think towards the end, we'll welcome Q&A and a conversation. And I know the conversation with all you guys is going to be very organic because I know every one of you. With no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to George, and I'm going to hush up and listen and learn something.
Let me just jump in for 1 second, Don. Just for all of us that are on the call, and I'll hand it on to George for a self-introduction. Is like my vision of this, what you just said, the powerful message you just said. This is the kind of information we need to spread to our students, Grant, to our residents, to the folks early on in their career that can hear they can make a difference. But you really have to understand what's going on. I know the acronyms that Don's talking about. It took me a long time to learn them. Teaching each other those words and understand what he's saying is super important. George, over to you. If you can introduce yourself for a couple lines, that would be great. And then I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me here this evening. Really do appreciate it. George Soares with the California Medical Association, one of the legislative advocates handling state relations for CMA. I'm going to touch on a few different topics tonight that we're really focusing on. Right now, we're in the thick of it on the state budget side. They have to have a budget passed by June 15th to keep the state running. Then I'm going to touch on a couple of the of the priority bills from last year there were big successes, and a few from this year as well that are ongoing. And then I'll close it out by talking about a couple of the key endorsements that CMA has really been has made and has really been pushing for a couple candidates. And then, like Dr. Hernandez said, happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. But every year CMA tracks hundreds of bills, sometimes in the thousands. We take positions on over a few hundred of them, and this is a rigorous process that has physician input, particularly from Dr. Gutfreund as well, which we greatly appreciate. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have physicians involved in that process, because it really guides where the government relations team goes, and it provides that voice in the Capitol. And whether that's from the local county medical societies, or at the CMA level or the AMA level, I think it is what drives our organization and makes us impactful in whether it be state houses or in Washington, D.C. But a couple of the key bills that I want to highlight from last year, some of you may have heard of, but just wanted to kind of flag them for you, is SB 306. This is a Senator Becker bill dealing with prior authorization. So this bill establishes a process for the Department of Managed Healthcare to remove prior authorizations for services and generic prescriptions that are approved at 90% of the time or higher. Implementation of this legislation is underway, and DMHC will have to issue an exemption list by 2027 to all physicians to notify them of what services have been removed. So this was signified a huge win for the California Medical Association, as we had been attempting to do some version of prior authorization reform for the past 5 or 6 years. Another bill last year that was successfully passed and signed by the governor, it was SB 351 by Senator Cabaldon. This bill empowers the Attorney General of California to hold private equity groups accountable when they attempt to interfere with the practice of medicine. So those were two wins that we were very proud of, and it really took the whole crew to kind of get them across the finish line. Moving on to some bills this year, just going to highlight a couple sponsored bills that we have, and then I'll do one of the key opposed bills before I get to the budget, but is SB 1146 by Senator Gonzalez. This bill idea really came out of the AMA conference this past fall, seeking to crack down on the growing usage of online AI editing, where scammers use a physician's image through deepfake imagery to impersonate a doctor without their consent. So this bill puts some guardrails on that and attempts to put deterrence in place. So these scammers either have to notify the public if they're doing it, which, that is hopefully serves as a guardrail there. That also gives physicians the legal authority to go and defend themselves when their image has been used without their consent. And that bill right now has passed off the Senate floor and is headed over to the Assembly. So things are looking good with that bill. On AB 2431 by Assemblymember Patel, this bill deals with the growing usage of downcoding by health plans, of automatic downcoding. This bill sought to put some guardrails around that. We had different versions of the bill that suggested they can't use algorithms to automatically downcode, also that they need medical records before they do any of that, and some sort of consultation with the physician or their practice. This bill was unfortunately held because it had a slightly higher cost than we expected. It was held in the Assembly Appropriations Committee last week, but this is something that we'll certainly continue to work on in the years coming, as well as in the regulatory space. And then the last sponsored bill this year I wanted to highlight is AB 2346 by Assemblymember Wilson. This bill would modernize the California's e-bike safety standards, adding age and speed requirements for e-bikes. We've seen an explosion across the state over the past 5 to 10 years of e-bike related injuries. So we really think that this is a common sense safety standards to put in place. And this bill is currently on the Assembly floor. One opposed bill that I wanted to highlight was SB 1333 by Senator Jones. This bill has been stopped for the year. It was not able to move through committee, but this bill would have allowed for naturopathic doctors without any sort of agreement or supervision from a physician to prescribe all drugs Schedule 2 to Schedule 5, as well as doing about 12 procedures that are not currently authorized in their scope. So that was a huge success for us this year. And, we're happy to see that one done for this year. And, hopefully it doesn't come back, but we'll, of course, be right back to fight it. Pivoting over to the state budget. So as many of you have probably heard, information trickle out over the last couple of years. The outlook has not been great for this year. It is a little better for this specific year than expected. But in the coming years, 2027, 28, there is a projected deficit somewhere between 15 to 30 billion. And that really is, a lot of that is due to the HR1 cuts, which directly impact physicians and the healthcare system in general and the patients that you all serve. So, we are doing everything we can in the state capitol to ensure that, existing rates are preserved and where it's possible to seek, rate increases. We're doing that, but then also looking at, trying to get creative and find different ways to generate revenue where it actually works for the legislature and for CMA and to ensure that is the positive impacts of that funding is felt by physicians and the patients that they serve. And I'm happy to kind of elaborate or fill in more, but the budget is an extremely fluid process this time of year, as a lot of negotiations are going on in the state capitol between the Assembly, Senate, and the governor, and it really is the leadership of those two houses and the governor that convene a lot of those discussions. But we are certainly in the middle of them right now. And then before I take a pause, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the key endorsements that CMA has had. So first off, we recently, a couple weeks ago, endorsed Javier Becerra for the gubernatorial race. Becerra, throughout the process of interviewing candidates, always showed that he was someone, he separated himself from the rest of the field as far as his knowledge and experience in healthcare. And we do believe that he is someone that CMA and physicians can work with, if he does win to be governor. And he always, he has his experience as Health and Human Services Secretary, as well as Attorney General of California, and about 2 decades in Congress. So we felt that set him apart from a lot of his, fellow competition. And, just when talking to him, he seems like he is someone who always have an open door to and listen to our issues. I think it's also important to mention that his wife is a physician as well. So I think that adds an extra layer of him understanding how impactful physicians are in our communities and how important they are. The second one that I'll mention that we're extremely excited about and very proud of is Dr. Shai Roy is running for the state Senate in Senate District 24, which is an open Senate seat in the Los Angeles area, Malibu, Santa Monica, definitely a handful of other cities in there as well, that is being turned out by Senator Ben Allen. So that is a race that CMA has endorsed in and has been doing everything we can to support Dr. Roy. I think that there is some positive momentum there. But it's one of those things where it's a little bit more low profile of a race in the grand scheme with the gubernatorial. But we're a couple weeks away from Election Day, and ballots are already out and rolling. So I think that there is a lot of excitement around Dr. Roy, and he seems to have some really good momentum and a lot of great other folks outside of CMA supporting him. And I can't emphasize enough, particularly from the government relations side, how important it is to have physicians in the legislature. Right. It really is them understanding the issues and the things that you all deal with historically or on a day-to-day basis, but them understanding it at a deep, intimate level that even when other allies that are non-physicians, they just don't necessarily always understand it. So it is extremely important to, kind of get our priorities across and to always ensure that we have partners in the state capitol. Those are the two races that I wanted to mention because, during a lot of times during primary season, CMA does not take a ton of positions on races. It's usually something that they go, closer to the general election because a lot of times there's a ton of candidates in the races, but we always do try to support, physician candidates that are running, especially when they align with the priorities of CMA. And then I believe I saw here as well. So Dr. Pan at the federal level, and I'll let Amy touch on that too, if needed, but he is someone that CMA is historically supporting. He's running for Congress in the Sacramento and West Sacramento area. And he'll be in a pretty highly contested race with an independent who used to be a Republican, Kevin Kiley, as well as a couple other Democrats who are competitive. But I believe from what I've seen, he does look to have a pretty strong chance to move on to the general election as well. I will, I know that was a lot, but I will take a pause and I'm happy to come back and answer questions after or do it right now, whatever works for you all.
Great. Thanks, George. I think we'd probably keep the content kind of condensed toward the front, and then we'll do the Q&A after the 4 of you have talked, unless there's any burning questions for George right now. Great. With that, let's go to Catherine, Dr. Catherine Gutfreund. Catherine, if you don't mind self-introducing, that would be great, and we can go on into your section. Thank you. Thanks, George, for a great talk.
Great. Thanks. Hi, I'm Catherine Gutfreund. I'm a family physician and worked with Clay back in Santa Rosa when he was still up north. So I Your current chair of the Council of Legislation, prior president of Sonoma County Medical Association, the current president of the Sonoma Mendocino Lake Medical Association, and I was on the board of trustees for 9 years. So been around CMA for about 26 years. So I wanted to talk to you briefly about the Council on Legislation, who we are, what we do, how do things happen. So Council on Legislation is a composition of about 71 to 77 members. So we have physicians that are at large, about 9 to 15. So people can apply to be an at-large member to come to the COL. We have all the specialty delegations, the mode of practice, ex officio members, along with all the districts. So what exactly do we do? So mainly George and the legislative team led by Stuart Thompson. We also have 2 other lobbyists that work with George every day, along with CMA Legal and the entire CMA team to truly, like he said, look at sometimes thousands of bills. We look over anything that could be possibly medically relevant. So, how does it affect access to care, cost of healthcare, physician control? How does it impact our patients, us, particular specialties? And we also look at what a senator or assemblyman person might come up with, like, oh, I want everybody to have a total body MRI every single day. Well, that's not rooted in medical science. So we review every piece of legislation that has any possible medical relevance. So there's kind of a timeline of how we do this. So in the beginning, or like mid-January 10th, the governor's budget has to be submitted and all bills have to be introduced by February 20th. I learned kind of the hard way. A lot of our legislators will just turn in something, but we call it a spot bill. It doesn't really have any meat to it. It doesn't really mean anything, and it may change. So our lobbyists are looking at things every single day, because what might get thrown in then converts to, well, this isn't medical at all, and so we put it on the watch list or do not follow, versus it might get amended and could really affect our patients, our practice of medicine. And so they carefully look at that all the time. So the kind of book of bills drops mid-February, and then we have thousands of pages to read to look at what are the unintended consequences, how much might this cost, how would it affect our patients or our practices. So then by the end of February, we meet, the entire CMA team and myself and Dr. Remender Gill, who is the vice chair, to go over all the bills. And we look at, do we want to support this? Support if amended, meaning we generally agree with it, but it might need a little tweak. Are we going to just watch it and see what might come as the bill develops? Do we oppose if amended, or do we straight up oppose? So one of the things George was talking about was the naturopathic bill, that naturopaths who have no training in this to prescribe everything from opiates to, medications, do procedures like sutures and lacerations and abscesses in the clinic is ridiculous. So we opposed, and our team got that squashed. So basically what happens then is we make a consent calendar. So the bill's about a week and at the end of March, all the members across the state will come to Sacramento, and it's run by parliamentary. Everyone has a voice. So whether you're speaking for your mode of practice, your district, and the thought is that you have met with your relative teams. If you're an at-large member, you're looking at how would this affect the practice of medicine. So we get together, all the physicians will extract the bills that they want to speak to, and then we basically talk about it, and then it comes to a vote. So CMA has a position that we put on all the bills, but that doesn't mean that's what the end position is going to be. So what happens then is our team will collate everything, what the Council on Legislation, all the members, 77 physicians approximately, and then we take it to the Board of Trustees for them to approve. However, there are many bills that might not have anything at all that we can discuss because they're a spot bill. So we meet on a weekly basis. Myself and Dr. Gill meet with our CMA team along with all the different lobbyists. So like I'm a family physician. We have lobbyists for AAFP, Academy of Pediatricians, AAP, excuse me, all the different lobbyists for different specialty groups will meet on Monday just to discuss what's going on, where are we with these bills. So I won't go into a lot of detail about how the sausage is made in the legislature, but it goes to one house. They send it to committees. A lot of times, oh, this is going to cost way too much money. So it gets set in appropriations and then might be put on the back burner for the next year. Then it has to go to the other house and then they will come together. And then eventually it'll go to the governor. And by the end of September, he has to either veto it or pass it. So there's a lot of ways that our CMA gets involved in the in-between time of testifying to going in and testifying, talking with our legislators. And George can tell you exactly how that's done because he does that every single day. But one of the things I wanted to swing to is how can we all be an advocate? So we're all individual advocates for our patients every day. When you're filling out that stupid prior auth, you're helping your patient to get the resources they need in the community. But we can also be advocates at the state and federal level. And how can you do that? Some of the simple things are just staying involved, get the hot list from CMA so you can just read about things. And then other ways of just coming to the legislative day, which is like the first or second week of April every year, which is super exciting to go around and talk with your legislators. But in your community, your kid might be in the same Boy Scout troop with, let's say, one of your legislators, and just getting to know your council people, your supervisors, things like that, because people look to you to be an expert. We don't need to know how to do legislation, but we sit with our patients every single day and we can speak to the fact, for example, one of our CMA bills is on e-bikes, that you treated an adult that was riding on one of the crazy e-bikes and was in a serious accident. So you have the expertise of doing medicine every day, and our voice is highly respected. So, what I like to say is that passion is what gets us up in the morning. And actually, I didn't say this. Harrison Ford talked at my son's college graduation. If you haven't heard his speak or seen it on Instagram or anything, you should just listen to clips of it. It was amazing. But he spoke to passion is what gets you up in the morning, and purpose is what helps you sleep at night. And we all have the passion for medicine. We all have that purpose of trying to make things better for our patients and our community. And so you can write letters to the editor. You can do an op-ed. So like if you just have, 10 minutes to do something like that, you can make a quick call or a quick email to your congressman or your senator to say, this is what I think about this. And of course, you always sign that you're an MD or DO because that goes a far way, especially when it's on something medically related. Start to learn about health policy. I have to say that AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, has a great handbook, and it is now in AAP pediatric residencies to learn about health policy and advocacy is in their curriculum. And a lot of residencies are doing that because we need to speak up. Our voices need to be heard, especially with that, as Donaldo talked about, everything that's come down with HR1 and just all the craziness every single day. You're like, how can one more thing happen? How can they take away, $1 billion from California because of some supposed hospice fraud? And anyway, I will get off my soapbox about those sort of things. But, you can meet and talk with your local representatives, get the newsletters. The CMA briefs are super fast to read, and and donate to CalPAC so that we can do the work on behalf to get like Dr. Cyroy elected, Dr. Pan, other, just help move things in the right way in California. So I will stop there and we'll happy to take any questions later. But it seems a bit daunting, like, oh gosh, I'm not an expert in health policy or anything. But the fact of the matter is, you have a voice, and you can speak to how something affects your practice of medicine, your colleagues, your patients, your community.
Excellent.
Back to you, Clay.
Well, I so love that, Catherine. The ability to speak up and knowing you have a voice and not being afraid or too timid to speak up is an excellent point. I liked all the other little tips you put in there as well. I need to work with you to get a list of something we can link on our website to just remind people where to go and what to do. Great. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I will definitely have some questions for you at the end, but again, we'll try to keep the content kind of tight here, and we'll turn it over to Amy. Amy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Do you mind self-introducing for us?
Hello, everybody.
Oh,
My
hey,
name is Amy Blumberg, and I am the Vice President of Federal Government Relations for the California Medical Association. I've been with CMA for about 2.5 years now, fairly new to the Vice President of Federal Government Relations role. I took that over in November of last year. I have 25 years of public policy, specifically health policy experience, mostly at the state level with some federal advocacy. I worked both in the state capitol as a young staffer, did contract lobbying for over 10 years for a number of different healthcare associations, including the Physical Therapy Association and the Psychological Association. Also worked a bit on long-term healthcare issues. I lobbied for the California Association of Health Facilities, spent some time with the California Children's Hospital Association before joining CMA. So have kind of a wide healthcare policy background before coming to CMA. I actually have a slide deck to share if that's okay.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. See if I can make this happen. There we go.
Great job.
All right. I'm just gonna get it into slideshow mode. Okay, I don't think that did anything different, but so here's a bit about the topics I wanted to cover. I think talking a little bit about the federal landscape is important just to set the context of what is achievable and what may not be in the healthcare space. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of CMA's priorities, protecting access to Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare payment reform, fixing prior authorization, workforce issues, federal regulatory advocacy, and then I will also chime in, similar to Dr. Gutfreund and George, about the importance of getting involved. Okay, so in terms of the federal landscape, you're all probably watching the news as well. There is a lot of activity in Congress. There's a big focus on the elections already. We know that Congress is, and the federal government is Republican controlled with narrow majorities. And a recent redistricting decision, the U.S. Supreme Court, Louisiana versus Callis, which weakens Section 2 of the Voting Right Act is going to have a really big impact. We know that Trump was interested in making sure that President Trump was interested in expanding federal Republican representation and districts in Congress, and then Democratic states responded. And there's this Supreme Court decision, which I think is weakening the power and will be changing a fair amount of districts especially in the southern part of the country. So that's definitely on the minds of members of Congress. We also know, unfortunately, we're in a war in Iran. People are very focused on affordability. Gas prices are high. There have been a number of House hearings on affordability in general and healthcare. And then also we've had a few federal shutdowns, and Congress right now is focused on Reconciliation 2.0 and providing long-term funding for ICE and I wrote CDP. It's Custom Border Patrol, CBP, excuse me. So just the landscape is pretty challenging overall. In terms of administrative activity, this is non-exhaustive, but we know that the Trump administration's been highly active. We have RFK Jr. as our Secretary of Health and Human Services. The Advisory Commission on Immunization Practices was disbanded, and there's been new vaccine recommendations that changes not based on science or evidence. And then just today, we have news of Secretary Kennedy removing chairs of the the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force. So lots of challenging activity in that area. And we've seen a lot of leadership changes in the cabinet. And something that really directly impacts probably many of you and our states, CMS has had this campaign of fraud, waste, and abuse. And there's now been an announcement of a deferral of $1.5 billion in Medicaid funding to California, with not a lot of due process. So that's another challenge that this state and Minnesota and other states have been facing. So turning directly to some of CMA's priorities, CMA spent a lot of time and was very active last year in pushing back on HR 1, the big ugly bill. We know there's $1.1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid, and we're seeing this harm already. We're working with DHCS to streamline work requirements and redeterminations and really try and minimize the harm as much as possible. We know that the provider tax in California will have to change. One of the elements of HR 1 placed a moratorium on provider taxes, and there's now a uniformity rule and some other provisions that make our current MCO tax something that needs to change. So that's something that we're working on. And I think right now, with the Republican-controlled both houses of Congress, there's not a lot that can be done in terms of rolling back HR 1 cuts, but we are making preparations for hopefully when there are changes, when we can restore some of the cuts that have been made. Let's see. Medicare physician payment is has been a long-standing issue. I'm sure that many of you are very familiar with this. We know that Medicare physician payment, it's a very complex system. And if you account for inflation, Medicare physician payment has decreased by 33% over the past 25 years. Hospitals and nursing homes receive automatic inflation to their payments every year. Unfortunately, physicians don't. And so a top priority of CMA and the American Medical Association that we work closely with is to improve the Medicare physician payment system. And there's a number of different pieces of legislation that have been introduced this year to work on that. Just today, in a positive development, the House Energy and Commerce Committee, the Subcommittee on Health, held a hearing on Medicare physician payment reform and had a radiologist, someone from internal medicine, someone that spoke about from Alliday that talked about value-based care and APMs that spoke. And so a lot of the challenges and possible solutions were highlighted in that hearing. So that's really positive. So I just wanted to briefly mention three bills that we're looking at and supporting that are going to make improvements to Medicare physician payment. HR 6160 by Congressman Raul Ruiz, the Strengthening Medicare for Patient and Providers Act. HR 8163, the Provider Reimbursement Stability Act. And then HR 8622 by Miller Meeks, the Medicare Physician Payment Data-Driven Performance Payment System Act. Okay, so HR 6160 really gets to the heart of the Medicare physician payment and states that basically the Medicare physician payment schedule will be based on the Medicare Economic Index. So going forward, there would be an automatic, rather than fighting cuts every year or pushing hard for increases. If HR 6160 were to become law, there would automatically be an inflation adjustment every year. This we're very supportive of. Unfortunately, it has a really big price tag. It's about $300 billion over 10 years. So I think there's not a super great chance that this passes in this really divided Congress. HR 8163 is the Provider Stability Reimbursement Act, and you'll see that Congressman Jimmy Panetta from your area is one of the members of Congress that introduced this. And this makes a bunch of positive changes to the Medicare physician fee schedule. We know that one of the big issues with the Medicare physician fee program is budget neutrality. And basically what that means is if Medicare and CMS is interested in investing more in primary care, that results in a cut somewhere else to a specialty. And that's something that is a huge issue. So this bill would raise the budget neutrality amount. It also improves utilization estimates. There would be regular update practice cost data, and then there would also be a limit on annual payment swings. So this would make a number of changes to improve the structure. And then HR 8622 by Congresswoman Miller Meeks, she's a physician from Iowa, is the Medicare Physician Payment Data-Driven Performance Payment System Act. Can say that 10 times fast. It's kind of a mouthful. And so this is trying to get at the very complicated MIPS performance that hasn't really worked well. And it's right now it's tournament style payment adjustments. This would mandate CMS to provide 3/4 worth of MIPS feedback to physicians in any given performance year so that they can respond in a more timely way. So that's just a little bit about some of the Medicare bills. Actually, one of the bills, HR HR 8163 is on the docket in the House Ways and Means Committee tomorrow to get marked up, which essentially that's the bill passing the legislation out of committee. It would make it eligible to be part of a larger bill package that could be voted on the floor. So this is really positive that this bill is going to be moving forward. Another issue, I think Dr. Gutfreund mentioned something about prior authorization earlier. That's another issue that we're tackling with improving seniors' timely access to Care Act, and this is specifically targeted at Medicare Advantage prior authorization. It has tremendous bipartisan, bicameral support, and it will ensure that patients don't face unnecessary delays and denials while they're trying to get care. It doesn't have cost, and we want members of Congress to pass it this year. It codifies the enhanced elements of the advancing interoperability, the EPA rule, and it places deadlines for MA plans to respond to physician requests for urgent care. There's greater transparency, and it would allow health plans to exempt prior authorization for physicians whose services are routinely approved. So we want to see that move forward this year. Workforce continues to be an ongoing issue. I know that there's a regular challenge of making sure that there are enough physicians, particularly in underserved and rural areas. And so workforce is something that we are continuing to work on. HR 7961 is legislation that CMA is supporting. It's physicians, H-1Bs for physicians and the Healthcare Workforce Act. And basically, it waives the $100,000 fee for healthcare workers that is currently imposed by the Trump administration. And we know that that's making it even more challenging to make sure that there are physicians that are available to serve in underserved areas. We're also very concerned about the caps that were placed on student loan borrowing in HR 1. So we're looking at efforts to restore that. And then also we're heavily engaged in the Rural Health Transformation Grant Program, which we know is really a drop in the bucket compared to the $1 trillion in cuts that we're facing, but wanting to make sure that physicians are engaged and we're making sure to take advantage of that funding and use it wisely. And then also want to underscore the importance of regulatory advocacy, given the immense activity at the administrative level by the Trump administration to make changes and issue rules. And we're being very diligent in the regulatory space as well. So this is just a few examples of some of the comments that we've made recently. CMS's hospital conditions of participation, prohibiting Medicare and Medicaid if hospitals are providing gender-affirming care. We provided comments strongly in opposition to that, as well as the prohibition on the use of Medicaid and CHIP funds for gender-affirming care. Also opposed that rule. Also provided comments to the Department of Homeland Security related to public charge grounds of inadmissibility. And then the Department of Education did have a public comment related to implementations on caps for student loan borrowing. I don't believe I believe there were 80,000 comments. I don't know that they really moved the needle, unfortunately, but we did weigh in on how those were harmful changes. So with that, I just kind of want to leave with, so you provided me with all of this information. Why does it, how can I get involved? Why does physician advocacy matter? And just want to underscore your expertise and voice is trusted and valued. We know that many members of Congress have like a healthcare advisory team or council, it's great to offer to be a resource. There's no way that your members of Congress or legislators are going to be an expert on every particular topic. So really encourage you to get to know your legislators and your representatives, cultivate that relationship, weigh in on legislation, share concerns. If you have that relationship now, once some crisis comes up, you are a trusted voice, and it's not the first time that they're hearing from you. There are always newsletters to sign up for, local events, town halls. Encourage you to follow your representatives on social media. CMA and AMA have action alerts. Definitely encourage you to participate in that. Dr. Gutfreund mentioned CMA's Advocacy Day. And then also, I think there's a lot of opportunities within CMA itself, such as the Council on Legislation, to get involved. So with that, I appreciate your time, and at the appropriate time, I'm happy to answer questions.
Excellent. Wow. Thank you so much. My head is
Wait,
spinning. No, go ahead, Don.
I wanted to weigh in, and I'll talk to Amy about Dr. Baines and Dr. Pan are both running. I put in on the chat both their websites, and I also put in Dr. Roy's website also for his state um, uh, election and candidacy in the Senate. Either one of you want to talk about positions running for office and what that looks like and how we support them?
Was that a question for me?
Yeah, and George. Because it was in the chat and I don't think you can see the chat.
Okay. Well,
That's more of an AMPAC thing, I think. And
yeah.
where
So
AMPAC is, and I can help with this, so the American Medical Association weighs in on national um, type of elections. And so while we support individuals that are in federal elections on a state level, most of that is going to be generated out of the American Medical Association's AMPAC. And so Dr. Pan and Dr. Baines are receiving a lot of support from those two organizations. On a state level, as Catherine mentioned, CalPAC supports Dr. Roy and other physicians that are running for office. In California, we also have Dr. Ruiz and Dr. Berra, who are both physicians who are in Congress and continue to receive support both from CMA and from AMPAC. Obviously, if you feel so compelled to run for office, that'd be great, be it school board or board of supervisors. But having those individuals within the halls of leadership is really, really important in terms of the physician narrative and the effect that political choices have on our patients and our communities. I don't know if either one of you want to weigh in on anything else I said, but there's just that.
I think that's very well said. Yes, I mean, I think it's really different when we're talking to members of Congress and their physicians about Medicare physician payment or challenges with Medicaid. Their level of knowledge is invaluable. So yes, we're very excited about Dr. Richard Pan's candidacy, Dr. Jasmeet Baines, and regularly, have a good relationship and regularly rely on the expertise and work closely with our current members of Congress, physicians, Dr. Ruiz and Dr. Berra. So encourage you to support CalPAC, AMPAC. It's all very important.
Great. I love this content. Amy, I had a question for you, and then I'll open it up to see who else might have questions. You ran through 10 super important items. I'm going to try to commit them to memory, but right now with the different numbers and how things are designated, it's really hard to keep it all straight. You almost need kind of like a, what's it called? Legislation for dummies, like a top 10. Like here's what you need to know. Here's the 10. And if you can't remember any more than 10, like print it out, post it, like calendar it, whatever you need to do. So I've been trying to um, review like one a week and try to get to the point where I understand and can talk to it, but not my day job. I'm a full-time physician and it's hard to put any more in there sometimes. So I'm wondering what information you have or tips you have as we're speaking to colleagues to try to bite this down, but not dumb it down because it's so much and it's so important. It's just really hard to have space for it if it's not what you do every day or not what you live.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think just maybe touching on overarching themes. I mean, I don't think you need to know the ins and outs of what each Medicare physician payment reform bill does, but know that the system's broken and there's different bills that are trying to fix elements of it. So I think just the knowing about overarching themes is good, and we always encourage people to talk about stories.
Hmm.
I think you can talk about a number of different data points, but it's really a story about um, assisting a patient. Or I know our current president talks about how he personally became eligible for Medicare and then couldn't find a doctor to provide him care. So I think um,
Hmm.
it's important to know some of the information, but the stories and the relationships really matter a lot as
Right.
well.
It's almost like the marketing of the different bill numbers, and this is the story that leads this one, and that way you could market it to our membership in a different way rather than send a bill about four
And
numbers. It just
you
gets
can always,
lost.
yeah, and you can kick it to one, George or myself to kind of follow up with an office if someone needs greater details or you need assistance with those details.
Okay. Well, I definitely offer us a medical association as you want to send things out, a little bite-sized information sometimes is really appreciated by physicians. And the things you mentioned here, the community action alerts, and Catherine, and I'm looking at the chat now, that's super helpful. And I find the auto alerts really help me because you can just get that bite-sized piece of what's going on. So other questions or comments? We got a good solid hour of content and this has been amazing. And I really appreciate all of you. I want to see what else other people have the call have for you.
Hey, Clay, can I throw in
Yeah,
something?
please.
So the you can sign up for CMA like updates on a daily basis, and it will go over the bills and what's going on both state and nationally. Super helpful. You can just read like the first few sentences and then click on it if you want more detail. I found that like a lot of the bill numbers, it's like memorizing Bible verses, which I
Hmm.
don't do. I'm like, HR, blah, blah. Well, we all know the big stupid bill, big ugly bill, HR one. But George can tell you that I'll often say, wait, which one was that? Because our lobbyists live it every day. They just have it memorized the way we have medications and
Hmm.
conditions and everything memorized. But I think the more you just read about it, the more you're gonna know about it because it also depends on what specialty you're in and what
Hmm.
mode of practice that you're in. Because um, if you're a solo small practitioner, a lot of things affect you more than if you work for Kaiser Permanente or for Sutter or you're a little bit more protected from a lot of the financial aspects of everything that's happening to our colleagues across the state and the country.
Hmm. Yeah, the last session we had a couple months ago, Dr. Rodhams was on this call. She talked about direct primary care, and it's just kind of mind blowing for folks that didn't really know that world. So that's the aim of these forums, this series, is to really
Right.
open folks' minds to different practice forums and problems.
Yeah, and how do you sign up for those? Go to the CMA website, CMA Docs. I'll put this in cmadocs.org. Just log in, and then when you scroll to the bottom, you can sign up for all the different um, newsletters. Like, it's just a daily brief, and you can just swipe left if you're like, I don't have time to read it today. Um, but there's also a lot of recorded webinars. So if you're doing a long drive or you're weeding the garden, it's a great time to just like listen to something other than your favorite podcast. There's a lot of really great webinars that are free for members to start
Great.
learning all the lingo and learning things because it takes a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been texting with Donna, kind of joking that we should just automatically sign up for the all of our board or just put everybody's name in there because
Yeah.
it's really interesting information to know. Thank you.
And one thing I don't know if I said this when I was talking about COL. Um, when the bills come out, we have SMEs, subject matter experts. We have all the councils, the technical advisory committees that will look at the bills. So it's not just me like, oh, I'm a family practitioner, master of, jack of all trades, master of none. So it's not just my opinion when we all meet to give the thumbs up, this way. We have many subject matter experts. Like I couldn't talk about, something that a PMR doctor, knows intimately or whatever. So it's not the chair and vice chairs. We have the decision at the end of which way we want to go, but it truly is a lot of physicians have given input to inform us on what position we're going to take. So I just wanted to emphasize that it's not just, oh, Kathy wants us to go this way, so this is what we're going to do. There's a lot of input from many doctors.
Awesome.
And then, of course, it's all at Council of Legislation Day, all of the representatives across the state are there to give their input also.
Great.
Back
Thank
to
you.
you for more questions.
Yeah. I'm just looking to scroll through my screen here. Anyone have anything they want to just throw out there? I see folks on the call. I won't call on anyone, but
I have a question, Clay.
hey, that's sure.
Um, I respect a lot of the things that that they're backing legislatively, but I have a question about whether or not the CMA or the AMA is what their stance is on some kind of national health insurance and national health core. Because I think that, it's been mentioned multiple times and no one can argue with it. The system's broken. And I think I honestly believe there's an ethical imperative that we move in that direction. And I don't know what the official stance is of the California Medical Association, if there's any advocacy positions they take or things that they're opposed to, or, so that's my question.
So Donaldo can probably speak to this better than I, but a couple years ago, we did a white paper on universal health care. So not single payer per se, not that, but I will search for it. That's why I've been looking over to this side to pull documents over. So CMA absolutely stands for universal health care. And I'll drop the white paper in, and if I can't find it, I'll send it to Clay to then send out to all of you guys. So um, absolutely, everyone deserves health care, and we need major healthcare reform. Donaldo, do you want to speak to that more?
Yeah, I will. I just
Awesome.
want to make sure that everyone knows that I think George and Amy are going to drop off here in a few minutes, and really appreciate for the time we have because I know they're doing other things and they're very, very busy, and so we appreciate that. So if there's any few questions we might have for them, but in terms of answering for single payer, yeah, they both have to drop off soon. I, it's a challenge economically because it would require the efforts of the federal government to allow California to do that if that's something California wanted to do. Looking at it nationally, the numbers don't pencil out either. It's a very, very challenging situation. If you're talking about wholesale, payment reform, the politics right now don't pencil out either, given how entrenched, both parties are in their sort of particular um, uh, political bents, if you will, or their thoughts about this. There has been a lot of conversation around single payer, and again, just trying to make it work. It just is billions and billions and billions of dollars in its current format. That said, I think we're open to any kind of healthcare finance reform that would make sense for sustainability and for affordability for our patients and the system as a whole. It's a question of what does that look like and how do we get there? And within the current realities of the political climate. So again, I think the challenges are just the way this financial situation has been built up over I wouldn't say centuries, but certainly decades, makes it very, very problematic. Anyway,
Yep.
we can look at that, but I think at this point, it just practically just doesn't pencil out. It doesn't.
Thanks, Don. Just to George and Amy, any last words? Thank you both very much. This has been recorded again. We really appreciate your time and expertise.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you all
and,
so much.
Yeah.
Feel free to reach out if there's federal questions.
Awesome.
Likewise
Hope
on
to
the
see you guys
state
in
side.
Sacramento.
Appreciate you all.
Thank you
Thanks,
both.
guys.
All right. Well, if anyone else wants to stay on for a minute or two and give feedback. So I really appreciated that. Don, Catherine, thank you for setting this up. Comments for Donna, Catherine? Now it's just about 5 or 6 of us now, and maybe we just debrief for a minute and see how we can pivot on this for the next few months. You can stop recording, Donna, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so one of AB 1900 was to look at single payer, but there was no funding mechanism for it. Is supported by the CNA. I'm forgetting some other group, and that did not go anywhere because there's no funding mechanism in California for single payer. And I'm having a hard time right now. I want to concentrate on you guys more, but the white paper on what would have to happen to have universal healthcare coverage. And it was a year-long technical advisory committee that put it together. It's very well thought out. Also, the American College of Physicians, ACP, has a white paper on universal healthcare, which is really good. And I'll see if I can't find it to send to you guys.